Hello, my name is Podcast, and you're very welcome to an Irish League all about Peter Cinnamon, where champions in waiting Linfield halted their canter to the title by losing at home to a rather slick Bandsiders team, who have either announced their intentions to go on a rampaging run to recapture their top 6 place, or was another flash in the pan by Dean Shields' men. Can the real side from the Ballycastle Road please stand up? Cliftonville and Ballymena did something very similar to keep their push for an automatic European playoff space nice and spicy. Meanwhile, we all begin to wonder, when do we really start to worry about this rather sharp decline for Larne? We'll recap all those games in full and more, as well as look ahead to this Irish Cup quarter-final lineup on your latest weekly edition of Kicking Match. Been a big week. Been a fun week in the Irish League. Also been a pretty significant week for me in Kicking Match land. A lot of you checked out last week's podcast. Bonkers reaction to that. I felt as though maybe I had went over that ground of comparing the League of Ireland to Irish League a wee bit too many times. But no, you edit up, and probably by the end of the time you listen to this, end of today, it will be nestling sat there as the second most listened to podcast I've ever done. So thanks for the shares, thanks for the likes, thanks for the comments, good, bad, or indifferent. If you haven't checked that out, the podcast, you can go do that now. Now's a good time to do it. Maybe tomorrow, just depends on if you want to follow the anthology that is Kicking Match in chronological order. This is a semi-sequel to that. Of course, we're going to talk about the games, but we may touch upon that. But knowing that last week went to near top of the charts got these boys a bit nervous, got my guess a tiny bit itchy feet. So to come back to show who's boss, because of course the people sitting there right atop of that Kicking Match listenership table, it's these boys who were there at the very start of the season, and they will be summoned to this digital studio come the end of the season to atone for their sins as well as their predictions. Welcome back to the podcast. They are some of the friendly faces and handlers of the account that is Around the Grounds NI. Hello, firstly, Joe McCallion.
Great to be here, Peter.
Not so good for you, Ross Welsh.
No, you're a scud. Every time I'm on, you're a scud.
You see, it's true. It was one of those things where Ross was very excited to be on, but before you could even figure out that he had been asked, Joe was like, yes, whatever the question is, yes. He was on such a high from Friday evening. And Friday evening was an interesting mark because it marked a month. I know we're already there until Kicking Match Live. Friday, the 21st of March. Pug Uglies, slap bang in the centre of Belfast. The first ever live show done by this very podcast. And of course, you can be there. All you need to do is snag yourself a ticket. And now's a good time because I know Irish League fans are usually, I think I'm talking about myself here, are pretty poor at grabbing a ticket. I haven't got myself a cup final ticket yet. I just assume it will be there. So don't assume. Know that in 3.5 weeks, whenever, you'll be sitting with your pint. You've probably listened to me for weeks or months, or maybe this is your first one and you really enjoyed last week. Now's the time to do it. It is at Eventbrite, is where the tickets are sold. There will be limited ones. And, gentlemen, I have an announcement. Joining our little night where we're going to be talking about everything Irish League, it is great to confirm Mr. Barry Flynn is going to be there, up on stage, live and dangerous with a microphone.
That's huge because I was actually going to put Barry Flynn on my rider. So that's even better that you've done that.
Yep, Barry Flynn's coming down. He's going to be chatting all things Irish League, quite literally all things Irish League. So if you have questions about a game between Distillery and Queen's Island from 1968, he might have been there. I don't know. But he's going to be chatting about his book, The Little Book of Irish Football. So go and snag it because you're going to have a little bit of him. You're also going to have a bit of Around the Grounds boys that are there, and there may be a few surprises along the way. What is it going to be about? Well, it's going to be all the frolics and hijinks that you usually expect, but also we're going to do a bit of Irish League Room 101, things need to get rid, bin. We're going to do some team comparisons, as well as taking your topics. You need to be there in the room to suggest things that we need to debate and discuss. So it's not a competition, but I know, especially if these two on the panel, they'll be scrapping and they'll be fighting. It's crept up on us wild quick, boys.
Certainly has. It really has crept up on us. And look, from my perspective, absolutely is a competition. Whatever Ross says, he's wrong. Even if I had it written down, it will be wrong.
We will start with a news story to kick things off this week, and it's great that we have yourself, Mr. McCallion, because it relates to your team. You're on a high from your victory, your surprising victory, I would say, on Friday over Glentoran, and then news started coming out late in the weekend. Around Sunday, you could sort of see things solidifying, and that is Cliftonville could be the next team, could be, being the key phrase there, to get some of that sweet investment. Doesn't look like we're talking takeover just yet, but if I can turn to some hard-written words from the Belfast Telegraph written by Graham Looney, he says that Cliftonville Chiefs have been in talks with potential investors and are going to update members next month. So after that cup final in March, some of the higher-ups from Cliftonville are going to sit down with fans and talk about it. A lot to consider, Joe, because once that toothpaste is out of the tube, there's no way of really putting it back there. There have been some incredible stories of success and progression. There's also a couple of nightmare stories that will live in there. So obviously, any fan of Cliftonville thinking about the idea of money, investment, they'll think, wow, isn't that amazing? But it doesn't come for nothing, does it?
No, it certainly does not. It certainly does not. Now, the thought of investment, I think every Cliftonville fan would just absolutely jump at the idea of it. But as you say, when it comes into practice, there's certainly been horror stories in the past. I think investment into Cliftonville makes so much sense. Like when you look at the actual club itself, the support, it's not a surprise that it's come along, but it's that fear of, is this investment coming in and not really caring too much about the club. It's clear that Cliftonville is it's a community club. It's run by the fans, so it's certainly important to keep that. You cannot lose something like that during this investment, and I think that's probably what's most important. And it'll be interesting to see what the board are ended up saying to the fans in a month's time.
Does this spook you, Ross, the idea that your fellows and rivals in Cliftonville could be the next team to join this investment revolution in the Irish League?
Not massively, because of the track record of what has come before, in that the current Coleraine situation doesn't really strike fear into me, and the Larne situation seems to have been a bit of a flash in the pan, in that it's back to,
Oh, bold. Already signing the death certificate here, are we?
well, just in that, you know, I'm sure we'll get on to it, but the natives are not happy up at Larne. You saw that on Saturday, and Gibbo's coming home. So to be honest, it's so hard to get investment right, as in using investment, in that there's limited alleys you can go down. And my worry would be, why are they investing in Cliftonville? Unless it's like Da from Get My Headpiece is pumping a load of money in. Like, what, they're just looking to get money out, and it's hard to do that with an Irish League team, I feel, unless you're getting Champions League every year.
I want to touch on a point you were discussing there, Joe, about why Cliftonville and why it would be an attractive club to invest in. One, it's Belfast. Two, there is, you would say, there's an untapped fan base and potential for a club with the culture and the history behind it. I think pretty much every club within Northern Ireland, and I think last week is really what that podcast was about, could expand their fan bases. We've saw what League of Ireland have done. We can argue about percentages and populations till we're blue in the face, but clearly there every Irish League team could expand the attendance, the regular attendance at their club, and Cliftonville will be one of those clubs who think, if we get the motor going, we could do that. There was a time where Cliftonville were selling out on the regular, and facilities is playing a massive factor in stunting Cliftonville's overall growth. So you see a team that's had success recently, and as well as that, has the infrastructure, don't they? Between youth, the women's team, all the rest, you are kind of built and ready to go. Just put them in a big shiny new four-standard ground, and the moon is maybe what you're aiming for.
Yeah, that's exactly it. In terms of like a blueprint almost for a team that you'd want to invest in, they're perfect. As you say, you've got the youth setup always seems to be producing good players. The women's team seem to comfortably win the league every year, and as you say, like an untapped market of fans. Going back to that point of it being a club run by fans, with investment coming in, there is even more scrutiny on those guys when they come in. It's not a case of just, like a Premier League club with millions of followers where, all right, things are going off the rails. I'm not going to bother watching them anymore. Cliftonville, it's people who, you know, that's what they're going to at the weekend. It needs to go well, and you'll definitely feel it if it doesn't. So it would worry me if it is, like, I know Ross was joking there about someone like Daft from Get My Headpiece. That is the type of investor that you want. You do not want someone who's over in America and not going to come visit. It is just, here's how we're going to try to get money. That's what would worry me.
Is there an argument here, Ross, that actually, if Cliftonville don't start to get investment, if they don't start to try and find ways to inject a bit of cash into the squad, into even just the facilities around themselves, like, yes, they're going to want to get a slice of that NI football fund, and we've been staring at the stand. That's just been a big white elephant for over a decade. But if they don't get this money, could the Irish League of 5 years from now, might Cliftonville be not at the level they are now and fall away to be maybe mid-table and a bit more of a bit part team, a level which they haven't been at for the guts of 20 years?
I don't think so, because their current base is so strong. Like it's not the ideal situation you want, but this country, the way it is, their catchment is half of the population ish, give or take. So they've got that base already. You can see from the cup finals that they get to, like, they love it. You know what I mean? Like, if there was a bit of a better ground, like, build it and they will come. Like, Cliftonville could comfortably get the numbers up, and then you get your money in that way. It's almost better the devil because it is such a risk getting someone in, and then it's obviously a members club at the minute. You don't want to lose that sense of control the fans have. And, like, I was in the social for the first ever the other night there, and it's brilliant. And you see Will Linfield sort of losing their grip on Windsor, but don't have a social club in the ground anymore. It's like, Windsor's not a good place to go, because you've sort of lost that community in a way. And that's just the last thing you want to happen, probably, as a Cliftonville fan.
Like, Joe, I think you know what I'm referring to. We've referenced the Irish League in its current state as this semi-full-time era. You could almost describe it as maybe the investment era that's been sprung on by particularly Larne and Glentoran. Glentoran were a big team to begin with, and perhaps they wouldn't be at the level they are at now. I'm sure many would argue that they simply wouldn't be in 2025 without the investment. Many Glentoran fans will know that doldrums from that mid part of the 2010s, where they were still bringing in decent crowds compared to other teams, but they simply didn't have the might to get some of the players across the line, especially in the financial predicament that they were in. But they're here, they're big players now. Larne are in a low ebb of their recent history, which is still pretty good across the entire history, but there is a chance, we don't know for sure, they'll come back firing. Coleraine have started to flex their muscles. Carrick, it's fallen apart and we don't know what it will mean next year, but they haven't been scared to invest. We've seen this year all of a sudden the emergence of Ballymena, who look to be spending more money than they previously had last year. Portadown have emerged, getting decent fan amounts through the ground, and then you add in all of a sudden a Dungannon, who are doing great things with what they have, and Glenavon are finding their feet. So particularly where you never know, Crusaders, if they get into Europe this year, will they go and invest and stick around there? There's been other people floating around. There is a situation where absolutely I know what you're saying, Ross. Fans, is this really the way to go? There's other clubs who are probably wiping their brow saying, thank goodness we didn't go for investment at the time, wouldn't have been right. But in this new world, do you kind of, if you can't beat them or you're worried that you're not going to beat them down the line, do you have to join them? And even if joining them is maybe taking a shot of something that isn't exactly what you want to be doing.
I don't really know how to feel about it. Like, you're absolutely right. It is a case of, you need to at some point get on the bandwagon. Like, we're all talking about Irish League growing. And eventually there's going to be investment at some point. As you say, there's probably a lot of teams that go on, thank God we didn't go for that investment a few years ago. Now there's arguably a bit more of a blueprint. You can look at teams like Larne, see how it was done. The thing that would worry me is, and it's gonna sound a bit cliche, I could picture some people rolling their eyes at this, but Cliftonville, without the investment at the moment, have been doing so well because of the players that they have, the likes of Joe Gormley, all local players who actually play for the badge as such. With this sort of investment, you could, if you become just a team that's going to buy the best players in the league, the way Linfield have done in the past, the way Coleraine kind of did there in January, Larne have obviously done, you lose that identity as a club. So it's almost that thing of what is actually better for Cliftonville. Is it sticking with this, local homegrown players that actually care so much about the club? Are we going to do better sticking with that even through this investment period? Or is it better to take the risk of losing that and go for the investment? For me, like it's far more important how we play and the players that are playing for us. So I certainly wouldn't want to become the way Larne were recently of just buying the best players in the league. It would certainly put me off.
Oh,
And I
it
can
sounds
picture a
awful.
lot of
Buying the best players in the league
I
sounds
know.
pretty bad.
And look, I also don't want to lose the ability to say, look, we're Skint FC. That's what we do. So I don't want to lose that excuse.
I don't know if you've been introduced to Peter's Little Hand Shake Hut. I'm going to have to put a proposition on the table that may be totally far off the mark, but it kind of gets to the point of what this discussion is. If you're hearing investment that reaches into the seven figures or maybe even touches that across multiple years, but there's talk of maybe 25, 30% of the club, does that strike you with fear? Or do you think that's what you're going to have to do to get to the level or maybe compete with the Joneses a couple of years down the line?
I don't think I would shake your hand for that at the moment. I don't think so, and it's a big risk. But I think that fan community is far more important right now.
Ross, what's it like being a fan of a club like Linfield where so far they haven't needed investment, but there has been rumblings over the past season that maybe some of the higher ups would be interested in that. It would seem surprising a couple of years ago based on the amount of fans, the turnover, particularly of youth players that have come through, and the fact that Linfield don't really have this reputation of splashing the cash either. This might not be something that you have to think about over the next 6 months to a year or maybe ever across your fandom. But if a similar story like this was emerging about Linfield, and we were talking the similar kind of, I'm Mr. or Mrs. Investor here, and I want to come in, and there's a percentage that maybe might not be 50, but it's not 6%. Would you think maybe this is what we need to become the behemoth that we believe we can be? Or as a fan of Linfield and the luxurious position that you're in, do you feel as though you're a team that you don't even hear any chat of this at all?
I'll totally contradict myself and say that I would welcome investment in a minority stake sense, because I feel like Linfield, the institution, rather than the fans or the manager, are still sort of hanging on we're the biggest club. It's a pleasure to come and play for Linfield, so we don't need to throw money at you. You should be coming in. I think in years to come, especially if more investment does come into the league, that will come into play less and less. We've seen it, Joel Cooper, for example. Linfield are a far bigger club than Coleraine, but money talks and people have to earn a living and secure their families' futures. So I think you'll see that drifting in a wee bit more, and I think it'll get to the point where if Linfield want to compete at the top, they will have to at least, take on a little bit of investment.
This is a story which will rumble on over the next few weeks, especially as we go to the cup final. That cup final could really be a tone setter for that meeting in March, because if you lose, Cliftonville fans will think maybe investment is what we need to get over the line in big games like this. If you win, you might think, you know what, times are good. Let's get a bit more, stick some petrol onto that fire and see how hot it can burn. So it'll be strange one way or the other how that impacts the mood. But before we get to that game, we had insert cliche here, dress rehearsal for that League Cup final in March. And I was very surprised by this. Was this a really, really bad Glentoran fall apart, or have Cliftonville started to click together well good?
I thought I was quite positive going into the game, actually. I don't know if that was just a wee bit of bias, but I was quite positive going into it. First half was shocking, absolutely from both sides, I thought. And then the second half, you could probably say it was a keeper mistakes got us the goals, but I was quite positive. I thought we were quite good. Give me a lot more confidence for the ninth, although I don't think Glentoran will be just as poor as they were on Friday.
It was a weird week for Glentoran. They had that sticky pitch down at Ballymena where they're ahead for so long and then throw it away late on. And they go to Cliftonville and it's their own mistakes that lead to their downfall.
Yeah, we've all seen this one before, where the Glens go on the big unbeaten run, but then they're always their own undoing. You got to see that game out against such a poor Ballymena team, and then like first half they were the better team, I thought, against Cliftonville, but then once they didn't get the goal, I thought they looked totally out of ideas, and it was only after they had a chance straight after the break, but after that there was one way traffic, and yeah, hopefully this is the start of a wee bit of a Glentoran skid, because for me they were still the only challengers left. I had them as more of a threat than Larne.
You sweating, Ross, were you?
If we weren't so far ahead already, I would have been seriously concerned about the run they were on. But in hindsight, I think they were grinding out wins and not actually being that good.
Like 16 unbeaten is very, very impressive across a multitude of competitions there. And what's this whole run has been built on has been solidity. It's just been going through the gears and getting the goals when it mattered. And perhaps the argument here on Friday night was that they got a biff on the nose with that mistake from Yolai, and they just never recovered.
Well, that's easy done. Your keeper who's been your stalwart all year, the envy of the league. If he throws in a bit of a wobbler, that's obviously going to permeate through the rest of the team. And after the mistake, they really never settled. And then there was a mix-up between him and Cody Lyons Foster. And like, if anything's going to get that Cliftonville crowd up, it's something like that. And then they never really got near Cliftonville again after that. It's the uncertainty just through the whole team. They couldn't string a pass together at one point. It's just Cliftonville played the game plan perfect.
Cliftonville end one run in Glentoran, but it also ends a run for Cliftonville. Yeah, they picked up a victory against Carrick Rangers midweek, but outside of that, they've been terrible in 2025, haven't been great, and it wasn't particularly a sterling end of the year either, 2024. What's happened to this Cliftonville side?
Yeah, there's obviously injuries here and there and different things like that. In terms of how we play, I've been happy. Even when you're talking about that period of 20 end of 2024 into 2025, like been happy with how we're playing. It's that final ball, that final chance has been shocking every time. Even against Glentoran there at the weekend, like there was more chances in that game that we probably should have taken. Um, and that is the type of thing that worries me for a final because you need to take your chances in those types of games. And certainly for the rest of the season. But in terms of just if it was to pin it on one thing, we're not finishing well enough, and it'd be interesting to see if Parsons and McWoods can help to make that difference.
Could have and should have probably been 4 or 5 if they'd taken the gilt edge chances they had.
That's not Cliftonville this year, is it? 4 or 5 nil.
No, not at
No.
all. Which is total polar opposite the last year when they were coming down with goals. So Joe Gormley's not going to stick around forever, but like they need to find something somewhere, which is just making that investment even more tantalising.
Joe, do you think you could name the Cliftonville starting 11 for that cup final in whatever it is, 2 weeks' time?
Realistically, no. There's that many different injuries that keep happening and changes to the squad, so no.
Like, the good thing about it is that Curran's got a good run on the side over the past few weeks. The results haven't been there. Joe Gormley, what was back there in that game, he came on as a late sub. Perhaps he can be warmed up and get a bit of fitness and injury free ahead of that game. Because look, a massive one-off cup final like you think if anybody's going to be deliver, it's him. I know he didn't play in the Arch Cup final, but you know what I'm saying. Based on the form he had been in mid-season, and yeah, getting Parsons up and running over the past week and a bit, that's been positive, and you'll never say no to a young fella like Jack Keeney coming up and getting his
No,
goal.
no, certainly not. And on top of that as well, which hasn't really been mentioned, and in no way am I blaming our results on Otomosu because, as I say, you need to take your chances. But Red coming in, Ross hinted at the chance that Glentoran had, and it's obviously a game of chances. Goals change games, and right at the start of the second half, they had an absolutely brilliant chance that Red did so well to keep out. If that had went in, you're looking at a completely different game. Glens probably could have run away with it, having hit us in that moment. So, look, there's been a lot of changes to the squad, but I think most of them are positive.
Out of all the ones that are either injured or slightly crocked, kind of in and out of the side, just based on fitness, who would be the one if you could have like the magic spray, that magic stuff from Space Jam that would make them healthy and fit and ready for the cup final? Who would it be? Is it Gormley or is it somebody else?
No, it's definitely Gormley. Definitely Gormley. The goals are what we need, and he was scoring this season up until he was out of the squad. So definitely.
Glentoran won't be sweating too much. They have a nice points total. They have a couple of games in hand, but the results this weekend are kind of bonkers. We really do. You said this to me, Ross, and I will out you that you cannot get excited. You can't get a fire in your belly for this top six thing. I totally disagree. It's what keeps me up at night and gets me up in the morning. This, like, and some of the swings and results this weekend were really, really interesting because, especially with the Irish Cup, third, which everyone just assumed was going to be nailed on Larne, doesn't look like it at all. And yeah, it's 1 point from 2 games for Glentoran in a week, bit of rotation. We don't know if they are suddenly going to fall off a cliff, but there's still plenty to play for, not even just locking in your top 6 position. But if you're some of these sides, you want to hold on to one of these top 2. It's almost as if we haven't been talking about the top 2 or 3 for a majority of the season because we've been so focused on, wow, look at Dungannon, look at Ballymena, look at Portadown being up there. But if one of these teams can lock in third and the cup goes a certain way, they're in the money. So Glentoran, looking at Dungannon Swifts, only 2 points behind them. They have a game in hand. They can't wobble here yet. They've still got enough of the season to go where if for some reason it doesn't go well against Bangor or whoever else in this competition, they have to get Europe now based on how strong and how firm their mid-season is. They can't throw it away now. I know they can, and unfortunately previous might suggest they could, but there's a lot to play for in East Belfast.
Yeah, I'll have to take back my words and my deeds because that is a tight little cluster in and around there for Europe. And even if, when we're talking about playoff spots, one place I would not want to go is Stanmore Park in a playoff final because that's not a good time for anyone. But yeah, like if this is the start of a Glens wobble, like you're so easy sucked back into that mire because like I can't believe how close all the teams are. You can even go down to Glenavon. There's a big gap, but like it's close gaps between every team, and you just think that could just be mental leading up to that split.
Let's talk about them. Larne, to a certain extent, they feel like the forgotten team this year, and now you can see the amount of games played. It feels as close as it has been for a very long time. You look at the form table. 1 point in the last 5 games. That points total has not been moving up. They've got 3 games in hand on the likes of Portadown, Cliftonville, Dungannon. But where are they going to get these points from? Because they look tired. They look completely bereft of ideas. They just don't look like a good mix of a side just to begin with. And there's still so much to play for. Like, Europe feels like a long, long time ago. I think you can mark down that Limavady game was the one where it all started to trickle down. There's a few results here or there, but they give up a draw late against Glenavon. A Glenavon team who were pushing them to their limit for a majority of that second half. It's not a good time to be a Larne fan based on previous expectations.
You're talking about Europe there. That feels like a completely different team or a completely different season. I think the most surprising thing about Larne is that all of us have completely dropped our expectations on them now. Looking at the way all of us were talking about, and obviously results are going to change the way you're looking at a team, but it's crazy to think that Larne side is looking this poor now. It's not even like they're unlucky or anything. They just look bad, unfortunately. And as you say, those matches played just absolutely crept up for a long time. You were looking, and there was like 8 games in hand or 9 games in hand or whatever, and thinking, all right, well they'll be up around the top come the end. But no, it's just I don't really know how to feel about them. I don't think there's any confidence either in the squad or with the fans at all.
Here's been their ferocious February, which we highlighted before going into it. The games go as follow. Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday. Did I get all the Tuesdays there? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games in the month of February. And are they going to squeeze one more in before? I think they might. 1-1 against Portadown. They do beat Carrick Rangers 2-1. Just lose the Cruise at home. Lose to Linfield away. Lose to Portadown away from home in what was an horrific performance. 1-1 against Glenavon, where They're leading, but Glenavon get a very, very late goal. And then they lose to Dungannon. It almost feels patronising to Dungannon to describe them as some sort of, bogey team. They've just been the better team on more than one occasion against Larne.
Going back to that playoff point, if it ends up being Dungannon Larne, I would back Dungannon in a heartbeat. And then you look at Larne's next four fixtures: Loughgall twice, Ballymena and Carrick, and you're thinking that should be 12 points. They're all away from home, and they're all against teams who should be scrapping. Like, it's a sorry state of affairs Larne have ended, and like I get they've lost basically their whole forward line. But like, come on, like you gotta be beating those teams around you. Glenavon are like not a good team, and they'll throw it away at the end. Like it's just so poor.
Do you want to know another fact about this? They go away to Loughgall on Wednesday, away to Ballymena this Saturday, away to Carrick, away to Loughgall again, home against Coleraine, away to Glentoran, away to Glenavon. One home game between now and the split. That puts it into a different perspective. Siege mentality is what they're going to have to try for. However, that's a lot of sticky pitches.
Yeah, it certainly is, and their record at home has been unbelievable. That
In fact, they're all grass pitches. They're all grass pitches, bar their own.
yeah, I think they're very much in trouble. Then it's not looking good for them at all.
Now, points wise, they do have 40. Okay, so they're on the outside looking in, but they've got 40 points. Portadown 42, Cliftonville 42. They've played 3 games less than those two teams. They've played 4 games less than Crusaders. You have 46. Now, I don't need to get there. Remember when I thought 46 would have got you to the top 6? What was I thinking? Dungannon Swifts 3 games behind, 46. So they are realistically in a battle between Portadown, Cliftonville, and of course Coleraine coming up the rear. They've only got now Coleraine are 2 games behind them, and they've got 2 games in hand against them as well. But Coleraine play against them at their home ground, so Loughgall could be a factor here. We don't expect them to be a factor against other teams, but this is just, if things don't go their way down at Lakeview Park, this is going to be really tricky. You would feel confident though, Ross, would you, that they're going to finish in the top 6, or do you start to see disaster in their crystal ball?
I kind of see disaster because Loughgall have given tough games to the Glens at Lakeview twice this year. We've struggled against them. Like, it's a team that can get up, and it is, talk about definition of a disaster if they don't get top 6. Like what is the consequences of that? Like what happens there? Like where do you go from there? Because that is just a disaster. I don't know what other word for it. And Coleraine, Coleraine looked good at the weekend. We made them look good, but they look like better than they have been. I don't know. If I had to tip anyone to miss out, it's kind of them at the minute.
Are you going to be as bold, Joe, or are you kind of praying and hoping that they fall apart to give your Cliftonville a stronger chance of getting in that top 6?
I would love them to fall apart, but I think they'll be okay for top 6, given how close they are on points with how many games they have. And obviously, I know they're tough games, but I think realistically, something's going to click, and I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, I do get that. The Ballymena game could be strangely key because I'll talk about that pitch. Oh my goodness, that could be a tricky one where if they get 2 points there, it changes things. It could all be for nothing because Loughgall could be the gimme 6 points that you would have assumed a number of weeks ago, and that would have them right where Dungannon Swifts are, who you think have a bit of leeway and a bit of slippage themselves, with a couple more games in hand. So we just have to see this week to week, but we've been talking about this with Larne for a number of weeks now, that, well, we'll see what happens, and the bad results just keep coming up. Like, what did you make of this Dungannon result? Dungannon took their chance brilliantly, shows exactly all of the traits that Andy Mitchell has: strong, pacey, can finish when he's got a man chasing him down, and they could have scored elsewhere. McGovern had a great chance late on. Larne had more chances than I've seen them previously, but it's still all kind of nip and tuck half chances. I mean, if you're going to stick anything on a milk carton round Larne, it would be, where has Andy Ryan's form gone?
Yeah, like it's for a team that just scored goals and obviously league bonuses left. Like, what has happened? Like, what did Tiernan Lynch have them doing on the training pitch, where it was like chalk and cheese, and like Dungannon midfield is sort of like what Larne are missing. Like they've got that bite with Biggie and with Leo Alves, and that's what Larne haven't replaced since Sule left, however many years ago. And you were talked about it like they're signing people for the sake of signing people almost. And it's like, address the problems that you're having. And like we're saying, oh, like they'll be okay, they'll get top six. That's still like reigning champions, the sixth place. That is still a shocker of a season. Like, where do you go from there? Like, what? I don't know. I did not realize the pickle they were in until we sat and talked here about it. Like that, it is just not good.
Injuries have been a factor, like, for sure. But I just look at this side, and you've got some of the key elements from previous years, and Want and Donnelly and Ferguson there's at the back. It doesn't feel like the same player. Cos goes on one side, they lose Ives, but Gallagher or maybe or some other players that brought in Phil's on the left hand side. Bolger was starting there, but he's had difficult time with injury. You'd think McInnes comes in with a bit of experience from the League of Ireland, but hasn't been able to impact the game in the same way that a Miller or a Thompson or a Sule would. And Quickie Gallagher's still there. Annie Ryan's still there. You have Paul O'Neill coming on late. I look at this and just think you've got lots of different parts, but they're not blending. They're not working in the same way. And maybe it's that it's either these parts just don't fit together like perfect gears, or this Tuesday, Saturday is just completely wrecking their rhythm.
That's the thing. It's so difficult to pin it on just one thing because there could be so many. But maybe Tiernan isn't quite getting the recognition that he deserved while he was there. No one's really talking about the fact that he's left impacting that team as much. It's more what's happening with these players and different things like that. Maybe he really was the catalyst that was driving what, a team that when it comes to players, maybe even under him potentially.
Let's do what we've done many times this season, give some love to Dungannon. They jump up in a big game and get a really vital 3 points. I think not only are they looking pretty solid for the top six, because I'm now starting to feel less confident about everybody based on what's been happening with other teams dropping in and out and all the rest. But they actually, if they keep going, are strong contenders for a straight up European place.
I think the top three as it stands, Linfield, Glens, Swifts, I think that's your top three that finishes the season. I think they're the three. I don't think best teams is the right word, but they're the three almost most steady. I think that's your three. I think Dungannon are clearly the team of the year, where there was that debate with the Ports earlier on in the season. They are clearly, they've moved ahead in that. And I just back them to carry on now.
They've got Ballymena at home, then Cliftonville, Portadown, and Linfield then at home. And that could be pretty much a procession. That game for Linfield, as we maybe saw a highlight of on Saturday. So they have big games, but the key thing there is that it really is in their own hands. They beat Ballymena. That's a key blow to maybe someone that could cause trouble. They beat Cliftonville, a clear. I think they beat Cliftonville. They're in the top six, aren't they?
I don't even know.
I can't see a scenario where they beat Cliftonville, get up to 49 points, and somehow still they get overtaken. Like I just don't, because if that game was to happen today, it would be what, a 7 point difference. So it's in their hand, and actually they probably are looking maybe to sneak up and get it. So they're getting a lot of love. This Crusaders side, this is like a strange mini revival not being reported on, and I really cannot put my finger on it. 4 wins out of their last 5. They keep winning. They finally stop this Glenavon run, and they do it at Mourneview Park. It's so impressive, and they continue this push. And again, other teams could go on runs and just claw them back based on the fact that they've played more games than others. It's not particularly exciting or thrilling from them, but it's just so impressive.
Yeah, it certainly is, and it came out of absolutely nowhere. I didn't actually realize it was 4-5 there until we sat down to do this podcast. Even at the weekend there, as you say, didn't necessarily look special, but they looked efficient. They got the job done. They went, did what they needed to do, and got out of there. And it feels like that's what they've been doing more recently, as opposed to middle of the season.
Like Jay Boyd was leading the line for them. They recall him for this very reason. They are struggling for numbers up top, or what they have there. They brought it in January. They just didn't feel like it worked. Jay Boyd was not starting for Loughgall.
It's almost like the Crusaders of about 10 years ago when they were winning leagues. Not the prettiest to watch, but 3 points every week, and you can't go too far wrong with that.
You got to say though, for Glenavon, I was starting to feel and worry, and they might not be completely out of it yet. But I was thinking I've called this totally wrong, discounting them, because what Paddy McLaughlin has done up to this point has went under the radar until the past few weeks. They're only a couple of points off that top 6, and that was not even something you would put on your bingo card at the time he was taken over. They have got their attacking flow going. They're out fighting teams, battling teams. They have so much energy, and it was a tough week for them. They'll probably think on another week they should be sitting here with 4, maybe 6 points. On this occasion, they're only taking 1 from their away visit to Larne midweek, and then hosting Crusaders. That does somewhat stick a fork in them, maybe, in their ambitions. But if they did pull out a victory there on Saturday, they could be evens with Coleraine, and only 4 points or so off some of the top teams above them, and with a game in hand. They look like they're going to fall short of top 6, but this Glenavon season has created a lot of positives going into the summer.
100%. They've got something to build on there now going into next year. I agree. I don't think they'll get up into the top 6, or even if 7th goes to the playoff, I don't think they'll get that either. But talk about green shoots, like night and day compared to earlier in the season when they looked doomed for a little spell. But they really have put it away, and they've been helped by Carrick's poor form. But focus on your own games, and get yourself out of trouble, and they've done just that. So what's that? 12 points clear with a game in hand to Carrick. I think they're home and hosed.
Do you sympathise? There'll be Glenavon fans getting very, very annoyed at their podcast player saying, please talk about the free kick that was given literally on the line of the penalty box. It was very early in the game, but that could have changed things. Saying that, I don't think you're allowed to score penalties in the Irish League this season, but if they got it, they would have felt pretty confident going into the rest of that game if they're 1-0 up with about whatever it was, 10-12 minutes on the clock.
It's such a tight one that, well, like Glenavon fans aren't going to say this, but it's such a tight one where you almost have to go, hey, fair enough. But they'd have loved the point there. They really would have. But at the end of the season, I don't think it will really matter. Not the belittle Glenavon fans Saturday afternoon, but it won't matter at the end of the year, thankfully.
Joe, we need to talk about it. I feel as though not enough people are talking about it, and I'm not saying that I revel in talking about it. Chris Atherton. Tuesday night against Larne. They do eventually get the goal to earn a point. However, that I think it may haunt him for some of his career. Probably some of his sterling, incredibly amazing professional career. But that was a miss, wasn't it?
Oh, it certainly was. It certainly was, without a doubt.
For those who may have not seen it, and I'm trying to think what highlights, if I have seen it on them, how much of a chance was it when it fell to him right of the goal? I think the goalkeeper was pretty much left for dead at that point.
Oh, like everyone was bound to be celebrating. Like you would have just probably been picking the ball up, going back to the halfway line. Off you go. There's the goal, but yeah, it was an absolute shocker. Would not want to see it back.
The one thing I was disappointed about that 1-1 draw between Larne and Glenavon was that it would have been great to see the goalkeeper claim the goal, because there was two of them going in for it.
Yeah.
And the goalkeeper pretty much almost pushed the player across into the ball. Like, they were both going for it. I would have really loved if the goalkeeper had been able to claim that.
The keeper has to go for that more. When you're that close, like, take the man out and finish that off. So close to pure football and drama.
And in turn, actually, Harry Murphy is a player who's come into this team and looks like he's grown about 2 foot. And he had a few chances in that, looking back at the highlights here. But yeah, I almost feel as though for the goalkeeper, he almost needs to stay on his feet, because if he went down or maybe slid in or even touched another player, I think the goalkeeping rules reverse when you're in the other box. You know, if anything happens to a goal, it's like an automatic foul. Like, they turn into this toilet paper and shrivel up and collapse and seem to have no strength in their legs. If he had dived in and maybe just touched Graham there and Graham kind of went down, I feel as the referee went, foul, you're a big fluorescent yellow man and you're clumsy up there, I think.
He should just empty him. You're never going to get as good a chance to score ever. Just empty him and try to score. Like, just lose the game. Just have a dig. You know what I mean? Like, tell the grandkids. You're not going to tell the grandkids, oh yeah, fella beside me scored an equaliser against Larne one time. You're going to say, I nearly scored.
Is Cadell getting enough credit? Is this, it's all finally starting to come together for him? I don't see this 11 or this 15, whatever it is, man, 18-man squad being a majority of what they'll be going in the next season with. But he's really shown that he can make it work, and that losing Offord and dealing with some of these long-term injuries, if they can maybe add in players like Offord or some of these highly rated youth players, where can they go? Europe could play a huge role in the medium-term future of Crusaders, because they aren't a side that can draw the same type of huge numbers that maybe some of their rivals can, and they need big prize money. And in many ways, their dynasty was based on that, was built on that. Of course, they need to find their own gems along the way. It feels like recovering their place in the top 6, which I think they will be proof enough that this has actually been a relatively good season. And they're still in the Irish Cup, which we'll talk about. So there's still a lot to go here. But if they were to get Europe, it really could change what kind of summer the North Belfast side have.
Yeah, definitely. It really tips off their season. As you say, top 6 was probably let's see if we can get that, see if we can stay on track and secure ourselves this season. So getting into Europe would really tip that off and set them up for next season well.
I think Cadell needed this, because he came in as this heir to the king that was Baxter, and no matter what, if you're the person that's to follow such a key figure like that, you'll get a bit of leeway at the start, but especially for the expectations that some Cruise fans would have had going into the season, I don't think up until this run he had fully proven that here I have the credentials. I know you want me to do well, and I've done well at youth setup, and I'm this club legend. But in the dugout, I think this past few weeks will give fans a huge amount of confidence and give his CV a lot of kudos to show that I can be a pretty good operator when it comes to the X's and O's.
Yeah, definitely. There was a fairly extended period this season where you thought the Crews were going to be one of the teams to miss out on top six, and now it feels like Decky's arrived a wee bit, and he's starting to put a stamp on this team. Other managers would have folded when your star man Kieran Alford goes to another team in the league, but he's found solutions. He's willing to back Jay Boyd, as we were saying, and they're looking good for their position.
How much do we read, though, Ross, into this loss or this victory for Coleraine? Everything just feels like it's framed through a Linfield lens these days. But we discussed the incredible run by Glentoran. Yes, Linfield have been unbeaten in the league, but it's since 2019 since they'd lost to Coleraine at Windsor Park. Is this game in this loss, is this an ode to King Fitzy?
That man has never looked better than when he's not there. You just see the gaping hole where he's left. Five strikers we had on the pitch, five forwards we had on the pitch, and you're still just missing that one. Like, I don't know what he brings, just that je ne sais quoi. You can't quite describe what it is, but like it was missing, whatever it is, on Saturday. But yeah, it was just his definition of a bad day at the office. Everyone bar Ben Hall was bad. The shape wasn't really there. The passing wasn't there. I think we had two shots maybe. It was just a stinker. But they're going to happen. What can you do?
What he adds is it looks to be the keystone of how Linfield work. He does all the dirty work. He does all the little bits and pieces that realistically keep this team ticking over. He draws players away. He runs the channels. He brings it down. He can obviously score goals from nothing, and he has the confidence as someone who's been in this system for almost 2 years now. Offered Morrison, Cooper coming back from injury. They didn't have that synchronicity that Fitzpatrick has up top, and there is some similarities to the Cliftonville Glentoran game, isn't there? Let's not shy away from it. What a cracking opening goal for Coleraine, moving it about, comes from the side, then to the base, nice little tiki-taka play. Conor Murray hasn't really been talked about oftentimes. The shine goes to maybe Shevlin or Glacken, even maybe Reece Campbell in this side. Conor Murray's been in and out and has flashed, but grabbing those two goals, two very different goals from him, will give him a lot of confidence. But it was hard to get back to where Linfield are, because Linfield aren't really used to going 1-0 down, especially at home.
Yeah, we needed to score first. You could just tell we needed to score first, and then the sort of more pragmatic approach can be followed. But once they scored it, you sort of knew that was it. Great goal. Cut us right open. The fellow behind me, you'd have thought he was a Korean fan the way he was eulogizing the goal. But yeah, it's just one of those days. Like, people losing their minds. Chill out. We're like 20 points odd, top of the league. Like, they'll be fine.
I think if I was behind you live in the ground when that goal was scored, I think it would be another wow moment for me before the Coleraine fans had their day. Well, great day out for Coleraine. This has been a pretty rubbish season for them, all told. But to get a victory up at Linfield, you will think, if you're someone sitting there with a blue and white scarf around their neck for some reason listening to this podcast, this is where it starts, baby.
Can I just say quickly there, I've got a full house on my Ross kicking match bingo card there. And je ne sais quoi was a risk going in, but it paid off in the
That was
end.
your middle square, wasn't it?
It was indeed. It's paid off. Um, yeah, I tell you what about that game, Korean, they look brilliant. Like I've been saying all season to Ross.
And there's my joke. Bingo card full.
That's fair enough. I'm trying to avoid it now. I've been saying all season to Ross that Linfield haven't looked good, and it sounds stupid because they're so far top of the table, but they look like the second best side there today or on the day. Korean were just passing it around them. Brilliant goals, both of them. So it feels like that's kind of been coming for a while for Linfield that get the ball down and play, capitalize on mistakes, and that's gonna happen to them.
The flash of Coleraine. They've done this before. Maybe not against Linfield, but I've seen this where I thought, bit of attack and play, nice pretty football. This side could maybe go on a run and start taking teams apart. But they've yet to show it week to week, haven't they? So until they do it this coming week in their next game, it's hard to go, here comes the Bandsiders.
Home to Portadown, tricky enough one. I think if they get through that, then the support kind of have to believe that they can push on. But like, let's just remember, here's another one that I always say: we made them look good. You know, Linfield never lose a game; they just don't win it. But we made them look good.
Bingo.
I think most teams in the league would have beat Linfield on Saturday, but you know that's what happens when you're the worst ever team to win the Irish League. You're going to get beat sometimes.
Did that annoy you, Ross? Like the fact that there was some aggro from the fans, as an aggro, I mean just hot air rather than anything physical from Linfield fans when you're trotting to the title. And this is a one of how many defeats you've had in the league this year? Like it is one of 5 defeats in the league this year.
Yeah, like it was already a bad time watching it. But see where I sat? I'm never sitting there again. Like I don't know if it was just the world's angriest men convention had sat behind me, but like relax. Like we're so far ahead. Like what do you want? Like you can't win every game of football. Like it was I don't know. I don't know. Like people just need to calm down and like the typical scapegoat, he wasn't playing, but like Kirk Miller just gets it every week. It's like, what are you doing? It's like, well, I'm getting the most assists like in recorded Irish League history. That's what I'm doing. Like, but your dad behind it thinks he passes too much. It's like just it. Don't get me started. Honestly,
Well, good news for you, Ross. If you need to move, there's about 16 other seats you can decide to plonk yourself in and have a nice afternoon on your Todd. Perhaps we talked about maybe Larne not having a great Saturday afternoon. It probably wasn't a great afternoon if you were of the Portadown persuasion. I chatted to a recent attendee of this podcast, Mr. Keelan Leaper. He had a big sad look on his face off the back of this game. Pretty much all of the rivals won, and maybe Ballymena could now be one of them when it comes to the top 6. Their first win since, I don't know, absolutely donkeys. And my goodness, did they love it. That pitch is barely a pitch. It actually looked sort of okay at maybe minute 1 or 2, but it caught up. And it almost felt like it was a different level on a fighting game or something like that. It feels as though, what territory do you want to be on? Do you want to be on a grass pitch with grass? Do you want to be on some sort of slick carpet? And then this one was just a mud ball. I talked to Jim Irvin after the game on the radio, and even he said it was terrible. I appreciate there's nothing they can do, and it is a council facility. But every game at the Ballymena Showgrounds is gonna be unlike any, like almost throw your tactics out of the window because you're just gonna have to play whatever's in front of you. Is there a complete mud bath part on the left wing? Well, good luck trying to get Adam Glennie down that.
Yeah, I've never seen goal much like it. It was absolutely shocking. But as you say, you kind of just have to play what's in front of you. And obviously the first goal was an absolute belter. The second goal is
Key
exactly
thing being not on grass. It was in the
it's
midair
in the air.
and there was no mud in the air.
Exactly. And that's kind of what happened for the second one as well. Like watching the highlights, both of them, there's one highlight, O'Neill just boots it up and it doesn't come with anything, almost does. And then the next highlight is the exact same thing again. Um, so like they're playing the pitch isn't great. Let's just keep it off the ground. However, Portadown will obviously be disappointed in that, as I say, they were playing the same way, just booting it up. You need to defend those better. The the same chance happening twice in a row, they'll be very disappointed.
It is such a good week for Ballymena. They are relishing this pitch that they have. I guess they have to. They have to make it their little, castle of mud because how else are they going to get back up and running? Because it hasn't been working for them anywhere else. They were down so many players on Saturday and they still make it work. It was a bit of magic from Hood on Saturday, introducing himself into the league, 17 years old, and with a right foot like that, might not be his last goal. And to get 4 points from Glentoran, and it was late against Glentoran, and then bagging 3 points against now maybe a top six rival. That Ballymena fan base at the final whistle, there was like a certain release that came out. They were like, whoa, haven't felt this in ages. And if they keep themselves right and they get results, let's say against Larne this Saturday, like, do you feel confident knocking them out and saying, forget about top six? Because they've got a game in hand, they've got the pitch factor. You never know.
If they beat Larne, then they're right in the mix, and that's not the incredulous statement that would have been last season. And then after that, they're away to the Oval, and that is basically just move the Ballymena Showgrounds pitch and put it in East Belfast. So
No, it's
yes,
not.
it
Come
is. It's
off it.
basically a home game. It's basically a home game, and just all of a sudden they're back in it. Tricky enough run of fixtures is maybe their downfall there, and also just their inconsistency. Like you can't go and not win a game since just before Christmas and expect to sort of be in and around these conversations. But 1 week of fixtures where everything just falls for you, and here we are considering them.
Like I don't know how much the highlights portray this, but it was a game that was full of errors. In fact, the throw in that leads to the goal was like a misplaced pass, I think, between Portadown players. Portadown dominated the play and tried to build up slow from the back, but nothing was really going for them, and it was these lumps up top or a defensive mistake from Portadown that let Ballymena in. Like they were doing nothing, and then all of a sudden the great hit from Hood. Portadown come out great in the second half, and then all of a sudden it's a penalty. I don't think it was a penalty, and they could be cooking again, but then again an awfully hit penalty, which was only heightened by the fact that Danny Lafferty originally picked up the ball. That guy had played in the Premier League, and whatever discussion happened, it was like, no, we must give this to our striker, who then hit a really, really poor penalty, which, for people who are counting, is the fourth missed penalty that I have commentated on this season on the radio. It can't just be me, because we'll talk about another team you can't score a penalty, and I also did commentate on one of them. A lot of Portadown talk on the podcast over the past few weeks. However, if we're discussing the bad run that Ballymena's been on, Portadown's hasn't been much better, has it? Like, we're Portadown just all hype.
Well, coming back to our predictions at the start of the season, I feel a bit more comfortable saying yes. Gonna get away with that at this point. Um, I think, as you say, there why they're trying to play football and play off in the back on that pitch, you need to change the tactics a bit. Like, don't get me wrong, Portadown play some brilliant football at times and played some pretty decent football against us, but Niall probably got it wrong there, and on the run of form that they're on, it is quite disappointing for them. I oh, I'm gonna probably regret saying this. Of the ones in the top six, I think they are the ones that will fall out.
They look the weakest week to week. They feel like the team that are struggling to raise themselves up to the big occasions. They don't win out against Cliftonville when they push late on. They're not able to squeeze out a chance. They had their chances against Ballymena, whatever it is, hit it against the post and all the rest of it. But little things aren't going their way. It's really weird. I don't know if you've noticed this through maybe Jack or any Portadown fans you've talked to. They're in this weird kind of limbo where if you say, I think they're looking good and could be in the top six, they go, well, I was in a position where I would have been happy just to go up. And then if we're maybe going down the lines that we're saying where actually maybe you're a bit overhyped, you don't have the attacking threat that maybe you need to get over the line, or that structurally perhaps it's the Route 1 stuff can work, but it's all kind of based on here now, and maybe they don't have the structure or the discipline that other teams have going forward. They get very defensive and go, what are you talking about? Like, actually, this player, that player, it's like, I don't know how to go. I think they'll be happy one way or the other. I love Minzamba on Saturday. He got took off in the first half due to an injury. That weird, it could be a big blow to talk about someone who came from nowhere, some 19-year-old from the Leinster League, being a big blow in midfield. But, if I'm talking about young players that I think are amazing, he's one of them. And then McKinnon looks like he's out for a long time, at least a month, with an ankle sprain, which looking online could be like 12 weeks. That could be a season over. So look at this guy. Is Amala, I think it was at the back, big, towering man, 21 years old though. I guess that's probably the average age for borderline centre backs this year. It's all slipping back, and they probably needed to win that game, and it puts more pressure on them going into Coleraine, because if they lose that, in a weekend where Cliftonville, Cruise, Dungannon all win, it shows you it can all flip if you're not doing the business in your own matches.
Yeah, and what I will say, my prediction for them to finish 12th is still mathematically on. Uh,
Oh my God.
Loughgall can get 30 more points, obviously, and are only 28 behind. So we keep the faith with that one. But yeah, that was a big one for Ports. Ports have been looking at that, thinking, yeah, we've got to beat Ballymena and sort of push on from there. And we've said it so many times, like one result, and that table is just looking so much rosier for Portadown. But I'm talking about a big chance to capitalise with Larne losing as well. But they're still really stuck in that mire, and I don't know. They've dropped off a cliff form wise at just the wrong time.
Loughgall did miss out on adding some points in this big ascension to overtake Portadown. In Ross Welsh's eyes, this seemed like not a particularly good game, and I think by 5 o'clock I automatically knew this would be the final game I'd be talking about from the weekend. Oh, if you're Carrick, do you think, well, at least we didn't lose?
Uh, yeah, I guess so. But during the game, they had the chances to win it. They obviously had the penalty, and there was a brilliant chance right at the very end or towards the end. A brilliant cross in from Gibson. Like, it's not a great game. Didn't think it would have been a great game, but I think they'll be coming out. Both teams probably coming out very disappointed.
I think Carrick would have shook your hand on a point beforehand. I can't see Loughgall clawing back that points difference. So just to sort of bat them away and keep them at arm's length, I think they'll be happy enough. I think Carrick are flying under the radar because Loughgall are just so far behind them. They haven't won in the league since November, which is ages ago for anybody keeping track. But I think they're safe just by default. Safe, automatically safe.
And Baxter keeps changing things around. He made 7 changes last week. A number of he swaps his goalkeeper around again this week. We see Michaelitis and Gibson all return to the starting 11, and there's probably a few injuries mixed in there as well that causes that. This was a chance at home to kill off Loughgall, dead and buried to a certain extent, and they've just left that door slightly open. And yeah, I don't expect Loughgall to go on some sort of run and beat out other sides, but it's what you do in your own matches, and in their own home ground they can't do it. And this penalty thing is just weird. They've missed 3 penalties against Loughgall alone this season. Like, what?
Just score one of them. It's like is it not like 70% of the penalties are scored or something mad like that, and they're just missing them all the time. It's like practice. If it's got that bad, practice.
No, once again, should never have been a penalty in the first place.
Oh, whoa.
No, I'm with Peter on this one. Should
Hard
not have been a penalty.
disagree.
He's gave the ref a decision, which is poor, but not enough in it.
I didn't realize it was on with the centre halves union tonight. That's a stone waller. Like,
A stone waller penalty.
It's a my
Just
God.
remind everyone Ross is indeed a striker when
It's
he
a
plays.
penalty.
So
Like, he boots him and he falls over, which in my eyes,
No, there's a leg comes out, and then it's removed, and then afterwards he goes down. I don't see that as a penalty. It has the trimmings of a penalty. I appreciate that. Also, can we also talk about what the real concern I have about this game is? I poked at Glenavon and actually Ballymena midweek about their needless away kits. What is Loughgall doing wearing a red kit against Carrick?
that's poor form, is what that is.
Because I even had this thought. I'm like, would I, if I was to track all the needless away kit wearing, would Cliftonville or Portadown qualify for needless away kit wearing against Carrick? And I think actually no, they wouldn't, because I think red and orange maybe do clash, like the sky blue thing, right? And then Loughgall just totally laugh in the face of that suggestion and decide to go, no, let's not wear our blue against orange. Let's randomly wear our red Anna United Portadown kit.
Well, I'll pull you up there. Blue and sky blue is not a clash.
Sorry.
That's not a clash.
And when was the last time Linfield wore their home kit against Ballymena?
I'm not saying Linfield's kit selections are right when they play away to Ballymena. I'm just saying blue and sky blue is not a clash.
The white shorts maybe impact that.
That could well be it. But not to go all English Premier League, but Chelsea and Man City. That should be blue and sky blue.
All right, Loughgall would probably wear 11 goalkeeper kits against Ballymena the next time they play, just to change it up. But
it's a lovely kit.
Because that'll be the real test. I want to get put on Loughgall Ballymena so I can sit there and go, should be wearing your away, or why are you wearing your away, and I can tell them off. This is the Loughgall moment in every podcast. It's just time's ticking down, and they're just not getting wins from anywhere. A draw is fine, but it's not good enough, is it?
It's definitely not good enough. And I don't know, you're saying Carrick slightly leaving the door open, but realistically, I think Loughgall they're not going to make up that difference. I think they're just down anyway, so they're probably feeling that, and it's not really going to go anywhere.
Carrick are lucky actually that Loughgall have been so poor, because if it was closer, they maybe could be in a bit more trouble. Or if it's any other team, the form they have been on, as you alluded to, since November, it would be relegation form in any other season. They've got games to go, but it's just been so poor. After all the investment as well, it's been a really, really poor season.
Cork are lucky that Loughgall's game in hand is Larne, because if they win that and it's 4 points going into the split, then I think you really are into squeaky bum territory. But I think 7 going into the split, 5 games, I think you're comfortable enough there.
We've got a mixed bag of games in the sense that we are crossing codes. We have 4 quarterfinals and a couple of league games. Shall we start with the league and then work our way up to the quarterfinals? I mean, we've talked about it already. We've got the games on Saturday that are in the league: Ballymena, Larne, Coleraine, Portadown. Victories for the away sides in Larne and Portadown could be very hurtful for those two teams when it comes to the top 6 it could almost be close to sticking a fork in them territory, which puts even more pressure on Ballymena and Coleraine. I think if you're Ballymena, you should play with a bit more freedom, thinking, sure, whatever, we'll see what happens. If Ballymena win, they go level on points with Larne having played 2 games less. If Portadown beat Coleraine, it will extend it from a 4-point difference to a 7-point difference with Coleraine having a game in hand. That would be a big O. So Portadown really did not want to see that result that Coleraine got. So do you feel confident either way for one of them? Like, it's put up or shut up time for the Ports if we're sticking with that game against Coleraine. It feels like the more even matchup, maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right. Portadown are they're gonna want in this sort of last running to really find something to really start ticking. What that is, I'm not entirely sure. Whether that's being more defensively tight at the back, or if it's finding a bit more goals. But like it's now a real point of, I think that game could really show if they're gonna stay in the top 6 or if they're gonna drop out of it.
No doubt. No doubt at all. And you would say that a draw would benefit Portadown because it keeps that 4-point gap between them and Coleraine, but it doesn't really help them if Larne win and jump over them with the games in hand that they have. Yeah, the likes of Cliftonville Crusaders and the Swifts aren't playing games on Saturday, but they have a second crack at Coleraine away at home. I really, really, really can't call it, because you would think at home and the way they played against Linfield, you should favour the Bandsiders, but they have let themselves down time and time and time and time and time and time again.
Yeah, I just can't find myself fancying them at all, just because of the sheer inconsistency. And then exactly the same, I don't fancy the Ports at all, because God knows what Portadown team you're going to get up there as well. So it feels like a draw, just because I don't think either of the teams are going to win.
0-0, 1-1 for me, yeah.
Yeah, low scoring draw. 2 late goals.
Yeah, I think 0-0.
I may be influenced by just the fact that I've seen them, and there was more injuries for them on Saturday as well. But how can you not predict a wee sneaky Ballymena 1-0 win against Larne up in the Mudfield? Like,
It just seems like it has to happen, doesn't it? The way this Larne team are going, just get up and at them, as they say. Like, someone nick a goal for Ballymena. I like the thought of it.
it adds to chaos, doesn't it?
It certainly does. I could see, however, a 1-1. I have a feeling that I don't think Larne will win, weirdly, but I could see it being a point. I could see both of those games ending up going like a 1-1 or a 0-0.
The idea of it's nice, but I just think Larne will just win. But is that me thinking of the Larne of old? Do they have the goals to do it? But realistically, I think, yeah, they do. 2-0.
Talk about the penalties missed by Carrick. I'm looking at some of my previous notes, which talks about Ben Kennedy. Remember him? Scoring his 6th penalty for Ballymena. Has a McCallion not scored 2, and then they miss. How many penalties have Ballymena got this year? Maybe that's the way they're going to win. Like, that must be at least
the ball just sticks in the mud up there, and legs get dangled.
I swear to you, I absolutely swear to you, Ross, they were throwing the ball, I forget which team it was, up in the air on if you're from the home end, the left dugout, and this is before they all got caught up. I looked fairly dry at that point, and threw it up in the air, and it bounced kind of near the penalty spot, and it didn't bounce. It just went dead.
Are we at the point where it's just an automatic pitch inspection at Ballymena? Because Saturday was like a lovely day, and there was still a pitch inspection.
And there was a pitch inspection. Yeah. It looked fine at the start. It was just after it got cut up got cut up. Like, there's plenty of, Lockall last season wasn't great. Don't know what it's like recently. It's just the nature of it. But as we've said before, plastic is not the automatic answer either, just based on EU rulings on an uncertain future on it. So, and of course there'll be plenty of people who just don't like the idea of more and more plastic, even though that's just where we have moved to as a league. Okay, so that's our predictions there. There is the Tuesday game, Lockall against Larne, which we kind of said maybe might be a draw, but that's just chaos football there. Let's go to the Irish Cup quarterfinals. What you really do realise how late in the season we are when this is all coming up. Glentoran continued their televised descent to maybe the final, or maybe it'll end here. Bangor, Glentoran, like, they're not going into this on absolutely sterling form. They're still Glentoran though, aren't they? Going down. That'll be a big crowd for that game, won't it? TV, under the lights, and look at Ben Arthur's and his form. 2 hat-tricks in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Feisty. Capital F, feisty.
That's an absolutely huge game. It's bound to be a brilliant one. And as you say, there, the sentence you said, but they're Glentoran. And no offense to any Glentoran fans out there, but that is exactly why I could see Bangor getting something out of this. They're obviously in great form in the championship. They're doing excellent this season. I would love to see Bangor win it as well. I think it would just be brilliant for them as a club, and also Glens out of that competition would certainly suit me.
I think it's a potential banana skin, but I think the Glens pull through just because they're chasing that quadruple of the Shield, the League Cup, the Irish Cup, and the didn't get beat by Linfield Cup. So I just think that the vibes of that carry them through. But Ben Arthur's, like, you can't stop that man scoring at the minute. That's one to keep an eye on.
Is there a single top 5 Irish League team or fan base that hasn't looked at that man and thought, why don't we sign him?
I'd take him right now. I don't know where he's fitting in. There'd be 8 strikers on the pitch, but I'd take him all the same.
Bonkers thing is, he isn't even the league's top goal scorer. That's McCallion. That's 18 goals. Ben Arthur scored. McCallion scored 28. Bonkers. Bangor are the highest scorers in the Irish League. Full stop. 65 goals across 29 games. They pump them in. You need that going into a game against Glentoran, because you'll need to really squeeze as much juice out of the opportunities that will come their way. My worry for Bangor is that they're not used to this. They're not used to a team controlling the ball. That's their gimmick. So they need to play a bit of blitzkrieg football, up and at them, and then keep it tight. And the worry could be is that they're a team that's built a touch, not exactly, but there's a bit of a glass cannon about them, in the sense that they're thrilling going forward. And I'm not saying they're complete feathers at the back, but I feel like there might be other tougher teams in that league who could maybe withhold a Glentoran attack. I'm going to say 2-2, and I'm going to say Glentoran win on penalties.
I am going to say 1-1 in normal time. Bangor 2-1 in extra time. Solus Grogan heroics in the Bangor net.
Yep, great keeper. That is one line of defense that you kind of go, you could see him getting battered. If you were Bangor, right, and you had to say who would you want to have a 9 out of 10 game? Is it Arthur's or is it PSG?
Oh, it's PSG. Easy one.
Definitely.
Nice one. Great season.
I agree.
Between Dungannon and Bangor, having a great season. It's like a number of clean sheets in a row he's had, like 5 or something. Very, very good. That's a great game. I think we'll all have an eye on that. The big showpiece quarterfinal, Shore Road, Cruise Cliftonville. It's odd because both these sides Don't feel like they're all fit and healthy and at full strength. But off the back of a win, it's weird to say it, but based on the fact that it is at the Shore Road and the way they've been going, and the fact that the last time he's met the one up at Seaview, Crews are favoured. Would you back them, Ross?
My instincts make me want to say, oh yeah, Cliftonville, but then you go, hold on a minute, and you just think, I don't know. I see they've limited the away stand to just the one, so they're clearly wanting to get a decent crowd in themselves, and it's a derby. Anything can happen. It's a real pick 'em. Give me thinking time. Come back to me.
Do you want to think about this, Joe?
I don't know. I have a bit more confidence about us. Maybe that is just coming off the back of that Glens match. Things are maybe potentially starting to click a wee bit more into place. And just, I know obviously last time we played them didn't go well for us, but it feels like in recent memory we've been doing a good bit better against Crusaders. So look, obviously it's a cup game, anything could happen, but I'm quietly confident about it.
I really am as well. I think this is a 2-1 Cliftonville here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like a 2-0 or a 2-1.
I just, gut tells me you'll create the chances. Parsons going through the gears. Hill knows how much he needs to be the X factor centrally. I like it. I like it. Form says it shouldn't happen. Previous record says it shouldn't happen. But guess what? Throw it out. 2-1. How's that thinking cap going, Ross?
Crews on penalties. Final answer. If it goes to penalties, it's Crusaders. Like Cliftonville need to win it in normal time
I
or
like
extra time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know why, because we all saw what Crews did in Europe on penalties, but yeah, I kind of totally agree with what you're saying. Who's betting against the Swifts against Carrick? Because it ain't me.
Nope.
This could be one that could be done by half time, and it was like that. Was it 2 weeks ago? And it's up at Carrick. Doesn't really change things for me. I think Carrick, they don't even like go on to like 1 or 2. They crack that burner right up the 9 and go for the juggler early.
It's the only tie around where you can just hang your hat on a team and say, yep, they're going through with relative confidence. And I think it could be a bit of a golfing class, 2 or 3 goal swing to the Swifts.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I kind of feel confident it's going to be like a 2 to 3-0 for the Swifts. Ards lock all, Dawson's Cream semi-final. And it's not a team in Ards who have any sort of momentum in their own right. It's Clanny Boy getting another wee outing on the Saturday. Lockall come down. Maybe this could be the spark that helps ignite Lockall's big run. But I think weirdly, if they don't get through here, just pack it up, boys. May as well start putting the championship patch onto the shirts for next year, because this is their opportunity. Like, win,
Yeah, that's they're going to be up against competition that they're going to be likely playing next year, and it'll probably be a wee bit of a leveler for them. I don't really have any confidence for Loughgall, unfortunately, going into this, and I don't think it's going to be a great game either. Maybe like a 2-1 Ards.
I fancy Ards myself. I just think that, they're sort of middling in the championship. They haven't got much to play for. They're all in the cup. They've already taken a premiership scalp in Ballymena. Loughgall essentially are a championship side at this stage. So I fancy Ards and do it.
I don't like it. I think this is Loughgall, maybe 2-1, 3-1. I think they have the better players, and with Ards, I just don't see the players who are going to hurt them. I don't like maybe Ruhi, but you're putting your hat on that. I appreciate results they've got. I've got them where they are right now, but I think they've got plenty more players to fear in Loughgall, and they could be buoyant off the back of their game against Larne midweek. You just don't know. People who have heard this will think, wow, wasn't that great? Were they saying that they were doing a live show? Yes, I did. And imagine all this wonderful audio chat, except it's talking about things you want rid of the Irish League, you want in the Irish League, and you could have these two and me arguing about whatever you want. That's what you can add into the question box. Just nail yourself down for Cricket Match Live on the 21st of March. It'll be a great choice. Unlike some of the choices these guys make in the games that they go to. Where are you going to this weekend? What's in the diary? Any more journeys to Tobermore?
I've seen enough of Tobermore for this lifetime and the next, and especially to then get a 0-0. So I think we'll stay Belfast-ish based. Probably Bangor Glens on Friday night, and then you kind of have to go North Belfast on Saturday, don't you?
I'll certainly be in North Belfast anyway. It's up to you if you want to join me, Ross.
Right. Sell your stuff. What is this Around the Grounds chat we're talking?
So Around the Grounds NI on Instagram and TikTok, AT Grounds NI on Twitter. Just clips of the goals, the big goals you want to see. We'll have a decent Cliftonville and Portadown following. So if you support any other team, would love to get you on board. We do go to them matches too. Those guys love it.
Cliftonville and Portadown guy.
Oh, they're mad for it.
It's almost like you aren't engaging with the Linfield base that you have that you just called out a few times in this podcast for being grumpy.
Listen, I have extended the olive branch to the Linfield as many a time on Twitter. I've joined them in Mooney gripes, but nowhere to draw a line. And if Matthew Fitzpatrick is listening, I apologise for my conduct at the start of this season. I miss you more than anyone.
You're like Aaron McCarry putting out that random apology that was maybe not totally unrelated to something else online. Yeah, well, I don't know. Based on the past few weeks, maybe I've got people that listen to this only follow teams that have Glen in their names. Just based on how big some of the Glentoran podcasts I did recently talking about the big revolution that the Vines had. Also, significant chats about the McLaughlin Revolution, and of course, get happy, get intrigued, maybe get frustrated. Listen back to last week's podcast talking about what the Irish League can do better compared to the League of Ireland. But, fellas, until next time, I'm going to block you on WhatsApp until the 21st of March so we can keep our thoughts, feelings, and texts hot. See you in Puck Uglies in a month, boys.
Look forward to it, Peter.
Can't wait. See you there.
You know the score by now. Go into your favourite social media channel of choice, unless it's like Google Plus or something, if that still exists. Type in Kicking Match, all one word. Hit follow, hit like, and you'll be connected to what I hope is your favourite little Irish League podcast that could. As I said, that's where you'll find tickets to Kick a Match Live. You can also, maybe if you're on the homepage for your podcast player and you're still listening to me, which you are obviously, go hit the bell or go hit the follow button. It means it gives you a notification whenever this podcast comes out, so you don't have to sit there on a Tuesday evening and check Twitter and go, what's going on? Why is it not there? Why is it not there? Or you can have, wow, look at that, he's got it out earlier, that's surprising. I might listen to him when I'm doing washing the dishes. And if you're washing the dishes right now, spooked or what? Probably in your car, for being honest. Guys, thank you very much. Should be an interesting weekend ahead. Until next time, there of course will be a next time. See you soon. Bye.